Hello and welcome back to Medical Compliance with Clarissa. I'm Clarissa Benfield, our Global Director and Business Line Leader for our medical, laboratory, and life safety and security businesses at Intertek. And we're so pleased to have you joining us today. Today's guest, we have Andy Swastek. Andy, thank you so much for joining us. So happy to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. It should be fun.
Yes, really excited to dive into our topic today. But I really like everyone to introduce themselves before we get started. Just give a little bit of information about yourself, your background, your experience before we dive into today's topic.
So my name is Andy Swastek. I've been at Intertek for a little over a year now. I have some previous testing experience in mostly the automotive field. And at Intertek, I am working in our durability lab, focusing a lot on packaging testing.
Yes, which is going to be the topic and thing that we're going to discuss today. Obviously, super relevant for lots of different types of manufacturers that we work with across all of our business lines and industries. But today we're going to be diving into packaging testing and how that looks for medical device manufacturers specifically. So obviously, it's a really critical part of overall product development. And when we think about medical devices and how sensitive they are and how critical they are in terms of how they're being packaged and how they're being shipped, can you talk a little bit about why it's so critical when we think about packaging testing as part of overall product development?
So packaging testing it's really good to consider because, pretty much for any other reason, you want your end product to arrive and do its assigned task or arrive not broken. In the medical field, there are higher stakes than a lot of other fields because you need that product to work, and sometimes it's a life or death situation. So it's very critical in medical devices because they also have a tough life on their own, whether it be in a hospital, in an ambulance. Things get thrown around and bumped around and fall and stuff like that. So having that extra durability testing is really important.
Yeah, especially when we think about how delicate some medical devices can be, how large or how small they can be, right? They really kind of run the gamut in terms of size and, fragility and things like that. So when we think about, we're talking about this idea of like transit risk, right? And some of the real world conditions or experiences that a package might go through or experience that maybe a manufacturer isn't 100% thinking about or totally considering. Are there things, that you see in a more of a real world setting that people should be thinking about that maybe they don't, or maybe they do, like I said, underestimate?
I think one of the biggest ones that I see in testing is temperature and humidity, especially now that so many products go to so many different places of the world. There are so many climates that can have a different effect on your product after it goes through distribution. So if you're shipping a product through, the Caribbean or somewhere really hot, and that product goes through a very humid cycle and then goes through a drop test, it's going to be different and could have a different effect if you ship your product through a super dry climate and then go through that same drop as well.
Yeah. And I think, as you said, for medical devices, that's so critical, of course, because we see people shipping them all over, right? It's really not just going to be going into one climate or one space all over the world. And so I think it becomes even more critical, right? When you're going with all these different environments and having to make sure that your product is going to be able to survive and perform in the way that it's supposed to.
Yes.
So what are some of the types of failures that you see the most often, let's say when a product actually isn't package tested or isn't properly package tested? What are some failures that you see?
A lot of the failures that I see, it's mostly pretty physical damage to the product. A lot of the damage that I'll see, you'll be able to see with your eye. It'll be something that you order that shows up broken or something that shows up a little scuffed. It's really good to keep a lookout for products that, like we're talking about electrical and medical devices, that could show up looking totally fine, but maybe a solder joint came loose during transit or something like that. So that we try to do a lot of functional checks as well. But there are things like, say, glass containers or something like that that could be a pretty big mess after it goes through testing. That's for sure.
Yeah. And so when we think about this, right, you're talking about the tests and all of the testing that we put things through and what we do, but how do the ISTA tests actually simulate, these real shipping environments or these real stressors or hazards, or like how are we actually able to replicate those in our lab environment when we're doing this testing?
So we try to lean with ISTA testing, especially more towards worst case scenario. So you would take a list of kind of real world thresholds that you would see by package, depending on its size and its weight and how often it could be carried, how high it could be carried. If it's a really heavy product, people aren't usually lifting it over their head or anything like that. So for drop tests, we try to stay reasonable and within what a package might see throughout distribution. Our vibration tests in the 3 series of ISTA, which is closest to simulation that ISTA likes to do, we take real data from actual drives across the country on a truck. We take that road data to simulate our vibration tests. Some of our other tests will do shock with bigger samples, pallet loaded things and stuff like that. Try to simulate the velocity that it might see in a train car if a train is switching or sudden takeoff that's being pressed. Warehouse stacking as well. There are a lot of formulas that ISTA uses, and so do other packaging testing standards that try to incorporate real world scenarios.
Yeah. And so when you're doing all of these tests, right, all of these very physical simulation of real world, but doing them in the lab, right, a lot of these physical tests, vibration, shock, drop, all the different things, what are they actually designed to uncover, right? Just to make sure, like in these situations that, exactly what's going to happen. Are there other things that you're discovering that maybe people aren't aware of? Like, what are you actually looking for when you do each of these different tests?
So in some of these different test methods have different purposes. So with the ISTA testing, there are 3 main series. ISTA 1 is more so an integrity test. So this is very preliminary testing of our packaging. This is just, to see, are there any glaring issues that we have in our packaging? Can this withstand the basic integrity tests that it may see, but more so just to make sure our bases are covered. And it goes up through ISTA 3 series, which is as close to simulation as we can get. So we do a lot of ISTA 3 series, ISTA 6 series for e-commerce and retailers as well. And each of these tests have their own specific guidelines that they will work with retailers to kind of create the closest simulation that they can.
So if I'm the manufacturer, am I selecting the ISTA 1 series, ISTA 3 series? How am I selecting which series that I would follow?
I would suggest, based on if you've done any testing yet, where you are in your development process for packaging, and if you have any previous data. So some manufacturers will say, we've used this packaging for the last 20 years. We just need to validate. So I would say, okay, we're pretty sure that we won't find any issues, that this packaging has proven to work pretty well. Go through a general simulation. As to where if you're just developing a brand new product and you have no idea, you're really early in the development phase, I think a good, safe way to do it is send what you have through just the integrity test, just to make sure all your ducks are in order. It's good to get that out of the way and have that proven out before you get all the way down the line in development and then go, oh, we haven't tested our packaging whatsoever.
Yeah. Okay. And then I think too, there's some question or some crossover sometimes between some of the ASTM standards with the ISTA requirements. So how do those things work together? Do they complement each other? Do they work hand in hand when you're looking at some of those different, standards or requirements?
Yeah, so ASTM, they have their own specific packaging testing guidelines. It's used, from what I've seen, it's used a lot in the medical field. They like to prove out their designs to the ASTM standard. So ASTM D4169 is the test series that it'll go through, and within that you'll find ASTM D999, for example, which is vibration.
Mm-hmm.
And what you'll find in the D4169 as well as the ISTA test is those other ASTM standards are basically test procedure guidelines. So these are methods and how you run the test, just to make sure that everyone's running the test the same way.
Got it. So they kind of interact with each other. Understood.
Yes.
Yeah. And you mentioned it a little bit earlier. And, I think even with medical products, right, I think sometimes people forget we see a lot of smaller and more commercial type medical home health type products that are being distributed via retailers like an Amazon or Home Depot or Walmart. And you mentioned that sometimes they have their own packaging requirements. So they work with manufacturers. So how does that kind of integrate with the overall ISTA testing and ISTA testing strategy versus what you might be required from an e-commerce vendor to comply with for your products?
So a lot of the retail stores, they have a pretty well established distribution cycle, within their stores. So what I know some test houses will do, we do that as well, is we'll work with this retailer and say, what is your product going to see in your internal distribution cycle? And then we can basically design a test plan using the ISTA test that will most accurately fit what your product is going to see.
Okay. So kind of working off both.
Yes.
That makes sense. The other thing we see, I think, with medical devices that are maybe a little bit different than other products or kind of make them unique is oftentimes we see that they're sterile, right? Or they're really high dollar value products, right? Life sustaining, as we mentioned earlier, we talked a little bit about that. But are there things that you see, with some of the like sterility or the fact that they're fragile or, the high dollar value products when we're thinking about packaging testing and that make it especially important in the medical sector compared to some of these other sectors where you may have something that's more of a consumer product, maybe a lower dollar value, maybe not something that's as critical as a medical product?
Yes. So medical devices and equipment, like you said, sterile barrier, that's can have a huge impact on, anywhere it'll go. That's very big in a hospital. Doing that testing it can be more tedious than say testing done, just integrity testing on a consumer good. So something like that, we do more than one sample. Usually that's a big difference that we do. We'll do multiple samples. We try to do as many different variations as we can throughout testing that it might see in the real world. We try to do we end up being a little more harsh with our grading and our evaluation and stuff like that, just because it's something that's a little more, can cause a little more damage than,
of course,
a
makes
consumer
total sense. Yeah. Yeah. And with that, when you say, more than one sample, if I'm a medical device manufacturer and I'm preparing for this type of testing, right, getting myself ready, getting myself together, what does that mean to me when we say more than one sample? How many are we asking for? Are we asking for 2 samples? Are we asking for 5 samples, 10 samples? Like, what are we actually looking for?
Depending on the test sequence that you need to go through, depending on your, if it is a sterile barrier package, if you have to do accelerated aging testing, or if that's already done, you could have up to, some suppliers will we'll have them ship up to 50, 60 samples.
Okay.
Just to make sure that we have enough in-house and enough data points to learn what we need to from the testing.
And is that outlined by the requirement, or is that outlined by a discussion going back and forth between technical experts, the manufacturer, understanding what the product is, what it does, if it has a sterile barrier, things like that?
It's a little bit of both. The standards, the ASTM standards, they will have reliability and repeatability suggestions for their testing. Not all of them are required, but depending on what the manufacturer needs, what testing they have, we'll try to work with them to determine the right amount of samples for what their need is.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Absolutely. During the preparation process. And then when I think about it, and, I'm a medical device manufacturer, I'm thinking for the future, how often do I need to be retesting this, refreshing my packaging validations? If I change a packaging material or the way that something is packaged, do I automatically need to retest? Like, what do I do from a continuous compliance, forward thinking, ongoing process?
So I would say if there's any change in packaging material, packaging supplier, design, any of that should go through a revalidation process. Not necessarily as stringent as the one that you went through in the beginning, depending on the change, but even as well as if there's a product design change, if there's a change in distribution that you're going to go through, that's also any of those reasons should be retested to some extent.
Okay. And so in theory, I'm a medical device manufacturer, they could come back to us and say, hey, we're changing either this supplier or this distribution method, or we changed this packaging material. This is what we did differently, or this is what we're doing differently. And then we would work with them to evaluate and say, okay, yes, you're going to need to do some retesting, not full retesting, or this is the retesting that you might need to do. But we'll have that discussion and work with them to make sure that they understand exactly what is required and exactly what they need to move forward with.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so keep it nice and easy, but ongoing compliance, right, is important, right? So when you're making those changes or thinking about those changes, it's always good to come back to the test house, reconnect, and make sure that you have that discussion. So that way you're always making sure that you're staying in compliance with those requirements. Well, perfect, Andy. That was a really great discussion. Lots of good information. Is there anything that I missed asking out about that you would like to share? Anything else that you think would be relevant for our medical device manufacturers who are listening?
Not that I could think of offhand. I'm sure I'll think of something in 3 or 4 hours, but for right now, I think we covered it.
Well, it was so great to have you on. Of course, if people have questions, they can reach out to me directly, and I'm happy to connect them with Andy. I'll connect them with you. So if anyone has questions, please feel free to reach out. If there's any other topics that you would like us to cover on the podcast, please let me know. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.